Today is Halloween, so I want to talk about a club that's going through some scary times. Everton. Now, it's already been a rough week for Everton, to say the least, and it's also come out that they may be hit with a 12-point deduction due to their overspending. And for a club that survived these last 2 years by a combined 6 points, this may end up getting them relegated and costing them their status as one of the ever-present Premier League teams. Now, there's a lot to be said about how they're being scapegoated while clubs like Chelsea and Man City are constantly able to avoid punishment. But I'm not going to talk about that today. Today, I want to talk about if this Everton team can stay up even with their 12-point deduction. Your first instinct might be to say, of course they'll go relegated. They barely survived last season. They're in 15th place this year. It's not like they're much better. Take away 12 points and they're sure to go down. And yeah, they did barely survive last season. But we're in this season. And have you seen the bottom of the table this year? It's bad. Luton, Sheffield United, Burnley, they all look like they don't want to stay up right now, and Bournemouth isn't filling me with confidence either. Luton Town is in 18th place, and they only have 5 points. They're on pace to have less than 20. And if this pace keeps up as it is right now, even with a points deduction, Everton will stay up. But this is assuming that the Premier League's pace stays exactly the same, and I'm not sure how likely that is. I could see Burnley and Bournemouth having a big uptick in form, or maybe just having a big winter window and really improving their squad. So I think you have to look at the standard for a Premier League team to avoid relegation, and that is reaching 35 points. And with the deduction Everton will receive, they seem really unlikely to reach it, right? Well, again, I'm not so sure. Everton's underlying numbers have looked very good this season. In terms of expected goal difference, they're in 10th this season, with a sizable gap over 11th place Manchester United. Expected goals suggest the team should be around 17 points, 7 more than they have already. Now, it's not always a good thing to be underperforming your expected goals. Leicester was doing that a lot last season, and that cost them their Premier League status. But with Dominic Calvert-Lewin returning to form, hitting 3 goals in the last 5 games, they're starting to hit that expected goal mark. They're starting to get some wins. And if they're able to continue that form and continue to hit the goals that the underlying numbers suggest that they should, getting 47 points pre-deduction is feasible. But putting statistics aside, it's just a pretty solid team that should be able to avoid relegation. First of all, they're coached by Sean Dyche. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of him because his teams are just awful to watch. Everton West Ham was terrible. I definitely switched to one of the later games when they came on, but I can't deny it's effective. He was able to do wonders with a Burnley team that was lacking talent and spending power, and I expect him to be able to pull off something similar with Everton. And it's not like the players in the squad don't have talent. In goal, Everton have England's number 1, Jordan Pickford. He's come huge for the Toffees in the past, and I think he can do so again this season. And goalkeeping can be very important in relegation battles. Last year, every team that went down had, terrible goalkeeping. And that's a bit harsh because I like the potential of some of those guys, but they weren't good last year. And Pickford is pretty solid in terms of Premier League goalkeepers. I'd put him in that same tier as somebody like Martinez, and he's the best goalkeeper in the world, apparently. And there are some good outfield players in the squad as well. Tarkowski and Braithwaite is a very solid center-back pairing. Tarkowski's one of those relegation battle legends who does really well at this level. I do think he's found his level, but when all he has to do is defend, he defends very well. And then Braithwaite looks like he has some real talent. I think he's got a Champions League future ahead of him. He's a left-footed center back, good on the ball, good physically. He has a lot of talent, and that's a really good defense for a team fighting relegation. And I think there's a very good spine of this team through the middle from back to front. In midfield, you have a very talented pairing of James Garner and Onana. Garner was a big part of England's U21 Euro winning team. I think he's got a big future ahead of him. And Onana's looked like a beast this season. I could easily see him getting sold for a huge profit this summer. And then ahead of him, you have good players too. Decore's looked good wherever he's played this season. He's a striker now, apparently, and he's done well in this role, being a big part of Everton getting the few points they have this season. And Dominic Calvert-Lewin looks like he's back. And if he's returning to form, he's one of the top strikers in the Premier League, which can be huge for a relegation battle. I don't have too much praise for the rest of the team, but it's not like a terrible side that's certain to go down. At fullback, you have Mitalenko, Young, and Patterson. They're all decent, and as a Crystal Palace fan, I can tell you they're not any worse than our fullbacks. Then at wing, you have Dwight McNeil and Jack Harrison. McNeil is somebody who I feel like hasn't really lived up to his potential, but he certainly has some talent. Jack Harrison has had some good moments in the past, and all this is without Beto or Danjuma really hitting the ground running after they arrived in the summer. I think this is a pretty decent Everton team. Now, I don't want it to seem like I'm hyping up this Everton team too much, because it's not that talented of a team. As a Crystal Palace fan, I've seen a lot of relegation battles, and I've seen more talented teams than this one go down. But Everton have a few good things going for them this season. Sean Dyche is a very good manager in this type of situation. He's great at avoiding relegation, and he's kept much less talented Burnley teams up than this Everton side. And in addition, as I mentioned before, their underlying numbers look very good, and I could easily see them starting to reach those goals soon. And lastly, this is not a normal Premier League season. The bottom of the table is bad. Luton and Sheffield United do not care about staying up. They're not going to be throwing games or anything, but they made signings for next season's championship, and it shows on the field. Then you have Burnley, who decided to be a promoted version of Chelsea and splash cash on a ton of unproven young players. Now, there's certainly some talented guys in that group, I can definitely see that, but it's not the best idea for a relegation fight. And then you have Bournemouth, who don't look good either, hoping the return of Alex Scott will help him out. I wouldn't hold your breath on Tyler Adams. But they don't look like a very good team either. And with the bottom of the league looking this bad, I think it might be realistic to forget the 35-point mark. I think it might be closer to 30, maybe even 25 points to stay up this season. And even with a points deduction, I think Everton could very easily hit that mark. The point is, the bottom of the league is terrible this season. And even if you take away the 12 points from Everton right now, they're only 7 points off of safety. And if they hit their expected goals mark, they'd be out of the relegation places altogether. I understand how scary it can be to have these 12 points taken away, and honestly how unfair it could seem. But I think when you dig deep into this Everton team, into the underlying numbers, into the rest of the Premier League, there are reasons for hope. For me personally, I've always had a bit of a soft spot for Everton. I've actually been to Goodison before, and they're a team that I really liked when I was first getting into the game. They had Tim Howard in goal, Fellaini, who I used to be a big fan of, and they always seemed like a team that was capable of breaking into the Big Six. And as I learned more of their history and how successful they were in the past, it made it all the more sad how far the club has fallen. But I don't think it's over for Everton. In fact, I think there's a good chance that they'll show up at Bramley Moore Dock as a Premier League team. Yeah, that's all I got to talk about. I think there is signs of hope for Everton despite the points deduction. I know it's scary, but hopefully you can still enjoy your Halloween. And yeah, that's all I got to talk about. Thanks for watching. See ya.